Well, one of the big issues facing us as a nation is how to fund higher education. You will have seen the protests this week, the anger and frustration of young people trying to get into higher education. Cabinet's told the Higher Education Ministry to hold a comprehensive review of how we fund students. But how much should we be spending on higher education? Would that take money away from other social needs? We have two guests for you on this. Professor Ruan Marman is from the University of the Western Cape. Peter Montalto is an analyst at Intellidex. Peter, I'd like to start first with this. The budget cuts to higher education this year. How significant is the reduction in the amount of money government is spending on higher education?
Good afternoon, Stephen. Well, the real
Right, we seem to have a problem with that feed to London. Peter Montalto is in London. Professor Marman, if I can, when government wants to draw up how much money it's going to spend on different social issues, it's a complex process, especially in quite a difficult society, a very unequal society like ours. Are there certain principles that we can use to try and work out how much we should be spending on higher education?
I think, Stephen, the first thing is that you have to look at the big picture, you know. I think each department, national department, comes with their own priorities and their own pressing issues. And on top of that, we had the pandemic that we are currently living in. So I think it's a matter of being agile enough to adapt to certain conditions and circumstances. And any government will always have a list of priorities. And these priorities are informed hopefully by what's happening on the ground. And that's a crucial imperative. I also think that while you draw up budgets, you have to take the lessons of the recent past at least with you. We knew about the fees must fall protests of the last 6 years or so. And obviously each year we are faced with the same challenge of students being excluded to universities. So I'm a little bit surprised that it happens every year and we just don't seem to get it right, you know.
I mean, in a way, I'm not going to say we were a victim of our own success, but one of the reasons this might be happening this year is because there simply isn't enough funding and enough capacity in higher education institutions, because the matric results have slowly been getting better over time, which means that more people qualify to go to university. There was, despite everything last year, a higher degree of what they call good quality passes, in other words, university entrance, because the matric results were better than they've been getting better over time.
But we've predicted this for the last 10, 15 years, Stephen. So when the NDP was drawn up around 2010 to 2012, we knew this was going to happen, right? A lot of people
We seem to have lost Professor Ruan Marman as well. We were on the line to Peter Montalto in London to have this conversation as well. There are big conversations to have around whether higher education is a cost or actually an investment in our future. So those are some of the issues that we hope to canvass in this conversation. We don't quite know. All right, I understand that Professor Marman is back with us. Now, Professor Marman, I do want to put a question to you around higher education being an investment. Many people might just see it as a cost, but it's really an investment in our future in two ways. And most importantly, perhaps, is it's the only way to reduce inequality in our society over time.
Oh, definitely, Stephen. You see, our current youth unemployment, and we're talking about youth, we're talking about our people under the age of 35 years, more or less. And our stats demonstrates that 60% of them finding themselves outside employment. And that's a huge crisis. It's actually a human rights issue for us as a country and mainly a social justice issue. So we have to get things right, and we have to be able to get the economy growing in a way to accommodate the youth to participate in the economy. I'm not surprised by the protests every year, you know, and my point earlier was that 10 to 15 years ago, we knew this was going to happen, that higher education will be growing exponentially. So therefore, we had to put the plans in place. I want later on to refer to the National Development Plan because there's major issues with this National Development Plan that we have. And we are subscribing to the National Development Plan, and all the departments of government are subscribing to it. So therefore, it seems like something went amiss over the last 15 years. And a lot of the lessons that we were supposed to have taken with us, we haven't done so and we haven't implemented it properly.
We can talk about the economics of this, right? And the economics of this is obviously vitally important. We can talk about jobs as well. But if you look at our inequality, the highest in the world, racialized inequality, does that perhaps mean that there's a stronger moral case to spend more on higher education because of the way it can reduce inequality? In other words, it can bring people out of poverty into the middle class, and often they bring their families with them. Does that mean we actually have a stronger moral case than you would have to spend money on higher education in other countries?
I will take it wider than that. I think if we want to enhance the capabilities of South Africans, we have to look at all the governmental systems and our big systems in the country and how they align with each other. I think if we take basic education feeds directly into higher education. And there are major stumbling blocks and issues and challenges in basic education that we need to look at. And with that, you have to couple a social development. I'm pleased to hear that social development and basic education will start speaking to each other more closely, right? But I think our economic system is set up in a way to privilege the few, and we haven't done much, right? We weren't able to make the strategic moves to enhance the participation in our economy as a general rule. So I think we have to take it wider than the education system, because the education system is directly linked with what's happening in society at large.
Peter Montalto, the analyst in Teledax, back with us now. Peter, I know that you go through the budget with a very, very close eye. I would imagine that the cuts on higher education spending were significant, mainly because government was losing revenue after COVID-19.
Good afternoon, Stephen. Sorry for the drama earlier. The problem with the budget is that we've come into a sudden stop, basically, on higher education funding. Remember, through the end of the Zuma administration, we started seeing 3 years of 10 percentage points above inflation increases in spending. And now, basically, we're going to see real rate cuts. So we're going to be coming in about 2 percentage points below inflation for each of the coming 3 years, about 8 billion over those 3 years cuts for higher education institutions, 6 billion cuts for student aid. And it's really the sudden stop. As numbers are expanding, are the problems. And now remember, in the context of the budget, we're not, and Treasury and Cabinet are not having these very high-level expenditure priority discussions. And so you parcel down this sort of salami top slicing, where you push the cuts deeper and deeper into departments, into higher education institutions. Maybe you're going to cut a bit of infrastructure to pay for this, extra money coming for student aid now. Maybe you're going to cut some TVET college funding, etc., to pay for it. And this is the problem. You need to have a step back and ultimately invest the political capital in some difficult choices. Are you going to fund more higher education places, or are you going to fund more TVET college places? These are really the sort of questions that need to be answered.
Do you get the sense that there are hard-headed conversations around the economics of this? As we know, investing in higher education is about investing in the future. It's not just about a workforce. It's about creating people who will do the research to help us fix some of our other social problems, and creating the people who will go into the economy and create jobs themselves.
Well, exactly. I mean, remember there were 3 reports coming out between 2015 and 2017 around fees must fall, looking at the future of higher education funding, which never really got sort of fully implemented. We had the sort of unacceptable first step, the costly first step, which was the raising of the student aid sort of threshold, which people got cut off at. But without shifting properly to a new, say, graduate tax form, or to a properly means-tested sort of segregated funding model of income repayment grants and things like that. And so we sort of took this baby step through the end of the Zuma administration without going full hog, and we're left in this unsustainable position. And this was the problem with the budget from a macro top-down level. Given the necessity of fiscal stability, this was all very necessary. But you get then these sort of bottom-up problems, just as we're seeing on grants as well. And let's not forget that line in the budget review. We said that these cuts will mean a lower quality of educational outcomes. And that was Treasury highlighting the obvious, because those big level discussions are not really happening. We need to see proper zero-based budgeting and expenditure reviews which encapsulate the entire education sphere, for instance.
Professor Marman, I mean, we're going to have a spending review now. There'll be a review by the Higher Education Department on how we should fund students. But now this review is being done almost under pressure. There's not a lot of time if you look at the way the budgetary process actually works. The risk, of course, is that without a proper solution, we're going to have the same problem, the same dynamic, and the same protests next year.
Yes, maybe, but there's a different side to this, and that is that universities themselves, can become more innovative to accommodate students in different ways. I understand that students are feeling the pressure and they need to register and start their academics. But on the other hand, universities can become more innovative. I think the difference in fees at the different universities across South Africa is a problematic issue. I think it's the elephant in the room. We are not speaking about that in South Africa. It might become a very sensitive and politicized issue. But why do you have to pay double for the same course at a different institution? Right? So those are things that in the system, across the higher education system, needs attention. And that will require that universities, come together on this project with government. That's the one point. The other one is that some universities have decided not to charge registration fees and to clear students so that the academic year can start and so the students are on their academic programs, right? And they will engage and they will see what they can do and work out strategic, innovative moves to attend to the challenges of finances. But blocking students, unilaterally from starting an academic project in the current conditions in South Africa, I'm afraid that's not the way to go currently.
Professor Rowan Marman, I really do appreciate the time at the University of the Western Cape. Peter Atalmontalto at IntelliDex. Thank you very much indeed. Really do appreciate it.